What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Chaos has hit the gaming industry, specifically with prices as they continue to climb, with the most recent one shocking many people online with some of the prices now, and even making some wonder, what does the future right now look like for gaming, especially with next gen apparently on the horizon, but we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about pricing for Nintendo with the Switch 2, but in the opposite direction. We're used to a lot of higher prices for the platform, though this time a certain game could be trying to undercut, go the opposite direction for Nintendo's newest system. And we'll also be talking about Perfect Dark. While it's been canceled, we did get new details giving us an idea as to what the initiative exactly had planned for this revival. All that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with Tokyo Game Show, which is slated to happen later on this week. And while we are getting a lot of schedules and live streams and stuff that are released right now, we can see there is one time slot that has an unannounced title, which you can see this. This is over on Gamatsu. Did a very good job laying out all the different companies and live streams that will be taking place down to the hour, which we could see on September 27th under the Famitsu Online section. There is an Xbox title, Microsoft Gaming, for an hour. No other details shared here. It's just an unnamed title. Now, most people are looking at this and they go, okay, this is it. Forza Horizon 6. And I would agree, that'd be my expectation. It'll be shown off for a while. Microsoft will have their live stream and most likely it'll close out there. It makes sense. Tokyo Game Show, Forza Horizon 6 is reportedly taking place in Japan for its setting. It all lines up, and sure, they would absolutely want to show it off for a while, this being an hour long, explaining everything in fine detail as we head towards, I figure, its release next year in 2026. So keep an eye out for that. Also, with Metal Gear Solid Delta now out, people are wondering, will Konami continue to remake other Metal Gear games? Well, Konami wants to know what you think about that, as in a new survey you can see. This was posted with question 10 catching a lot of attention, saying please select all of the following Metal Gear series titles that you would like to see remade. Doesn't seem like there's a limit, as it says just multiple answers, I guess, so you can check all of them. Maybe they're trying to figure out which ones people just really don't like or aren't familiar with, because otherwise I'd look at this and go, well, clearly Metal Gear Solid 1 should be next, or that's the most logical one going from Delta in terms of like the mainstream Metal Gear games. Metal Gear Solid's right there. And then Metal Gear Solid 2, that'd be cool. See, I'm already checking multiples. For Metal Gear Solid 4, I think that's a game, doesn't necessarily need a full remake. It needs more of the remaster treatment and the porting treatment like we have with their Metal Gear Solid collection. And I figure that is going to be in the Volume 2 that hopefully is slated to come out in the next year or so. But we'll find out more about that going forward. At least for now, though, check out this survey. You can check off which ones you would like to see remade and leave out the ones that apparently you don't want to see remade. Oh, and we did have that Lenovo Legion Go 2 that was revealed, and it was north of $1,000 for the base model. The one that most people are looking at was like that $1,350 model because it lines up versus the original Lenovo Legion Go in terms of like storage and features and stuff. Well, it appears there's a lot of interest in this device, at least according to Lenovo. This we can see over on VGC. They say, according to an official post on the Legion Go Reddit page, Lenovo has started canceling some of its customers' pre-orders because it doesn't have enough stock to meet demand yet. Now, here's the thing about this, okay? They could have expected 1,000 pre-orders and said, you know, we'll go for that, and they get 1,500 pre-orders. Now, okay, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's exceeding demand that they were expecting, so they're not able to fill pre-orders. That's the thing. I mean, it sounds like they are at least garnering more interest despite the higher price tag, but we don't really know where exactly, like, we don't know what the numbers really are to get an idea as to how interested people are really in a device like this that is more than I mean, it's not cheap, right? So that is the thing I'm curious about, how this does in the long run, because we already know that the PC gaming handheld sector isn't exactly massive. It's about 6 million units total in lifetime sales, including the Steam Deck and all the others. So what exactly are we dealing with here? Hard to say, but at least for now, Lenovo needs to find more stock to fill some of these pre-orders. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with chaos in the gaming industry, with prices continuing to climb mid-generation. Maybe towards the end of the generation for the Xbox Series and the PS5, we'll see, since it feels like Microsoft is ready to move on now. but they did indeed raise the prices of the Xbox consoles across the board again. They've already done it earlier this year, and now here we are with certainly testing the upper limits of what a console should sell for. This we can see, though, over on Windows Central. Now, Microsoft also put out an official statement over on their website that I'll have linked down below in the sources if you want to see it from there. Windows Central did a very good job, at least lining up what it was previously versus where we are now with the prices. And we can see at the top the Xbox Series S 512GB. The pricing now after the increases will be October 3rd, by the way, so you still have a little bit of time if you want to grab it at the previous price point. $400 though for an Xbox Series S 512GB. Worth noting, it started at $300 and the generation began in 2020. So going up $100, yeah. And we have the Xbox Series S 1TB at $450. The Xbox Series X Digital, that's $600. The Xbox Series X with a disk drive, that's the 1TB model, at $650. And the Xbox Series X 2TB Galaxy Black Special Edition, $800. That's right. We are now looking at an $800 console. So I will say that the 2TB Galaxy Black Special Edition, I do wonder how many of those Microsoft really ships out. I think most people would say, well, their flagship system that they really showed up to the generation with in 2020 was the Xbox Series X. Still, that is a $650 system at this time. And I mean, even you look at it next to the PS5 and the PS5 Pro. The Pro is a $750 device without a disk drive, but even that, with a 2TB storage size, is below, say, the Galaxy Black and maybe just $100 more than the Series X for now. That's the biggest thing here. While Windows Central works to explain the price increases here and people are still kind of arguing about it with tariffs and stuff, the bottom line, the things are just getting more expensive as the generation's going on, and it's the complete opposite that we see with just about every other generation. Even when the PS4 Pro came in, it didn't get more expensive. It slotted in where the PS4 was at $400, and the PS4 ended up turning into the slim model and moving down to $300. Before that, the 360 and the PS3 got very cheap compared to where they launched, especially the PS3 at $600 in 2006. And there's just so many other examples beyond at that even, especially with Black Friday sales and other things. But here we are now with the most expensive consoles we've really seen throughout a generation, with the line going the wrong direction. And since we believe the next Xbox generation could start as soon as a year from now, holiday 2026, what does that mean for the next console? And that is a major concern right now, because I do still think there's room and possibility for Nintendo with their Switch 2 to go up in price, and for Sony with their PlayStation 5 to increase again. Sony has really been trying to keep the PS5 from going up in price. I mean, they've done a lot of other things, even removing storage from the system, as we saw out in Europe, where they moved it back to 825 gigabytes, and they're just trying to do whatever they can to not increase the price, because Sony does want to still sell consoles, and you raise the price, you're just going to start really pricing people out, or they're just going to wait, hoping for at some point the price to go back down. But with the idea of the Switch 2 maybe moving to $500, or just constantly having some kind of bundled system, and they slowly phase out a $450 unit, and then the PS5 maybe going up, it's hard to imagine the next generation not testing some even crazier price. The $1,000 console has now been floated online. And it's hard not to see that point of view with an $800, this Galaxy Black Special Edition 2TB Xbox being on the market there at $800. It's not that much of a far cry to $1,000 for a system that we believe will just be more advanced across the board. That's not to say we wouldn't have multiple SKUs, and the way I think Microsoft is moving right now is trying to separate from them being a hardware manufacturer for Xbox. Not that they won't still make a console, but they want to be seen more as the OS that you're using across all your devices, and then maybe open the door for third-party hardware manufacturers to get on board with that OS and present maybe the vision for a cheap system. Maybe the vision for a $2,000 Xbox. I mean, really, who knows at this point? But that's kind of where I think Microsoft is sitting. And I do believe we're probably going to see their flagship next generation Xbox. I think Project Magnus is what's kind of being floated around. It's probably going to be more than the Series X right now at $650. It might be $700 to $800. And that still sounds ridiculous. But the world's in a weird spot right now. We just see prices going up all over the place, so it's not hard to believe. But it's going to be an interesting year heading into holiday 2026 for Microsoft, and then also for Sony or Nintendo to see if they can keep their prices where they are now. Next up, let's talk about an interesting pricing that was shown online for a Switch 2 edition, that being for Resident Evil Requiem. And this garnered a lot of conversation because we've talked about the game key cards, and I think we all figure Resident Evil Requiem is going to be a game key card, just the file size and how much these 64GB cartridges apparently cost behind the scenes, and how all these third-party companies, for the most part, the majority, are allergic to the 64GB cartridge. Resident Evil Requiem most likely is going to be on a game key card, and who's to say, maybe it's more than 64GB even. We'll see when it's all said and done there, but if game key cards are going to be more and more of a thing, there has to be more wiggle room, I think, for some of these third-party publishers, and Capcom might be at least tipping their hand here. We'll see, but at least for now, this we can see over on My Nintendo News, who notes the recommended retail price for PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, that being for Resident Evil Requiem, is £70, whereas the Switch 2 version will be £60. It should be noted that it's extremely likely that the game will be a game key card on Nintendo's latest platform. There you go. So people are going to do conversions and stuff from pounds to dollars. To me, that's not the part that's important here. It's the difference, even in just pounds, between the Switch 2 version and the Series X and S version, which is why people are thinking that maybe Requiem will be $70 in the US, say on the PS5 and the Xbox Series, and $60 on the Switch 2 because it's a game key card. And let's face it, the Switch 2 version isn't going to be as advanced graphically, even in terms of frame rate, as the PS5 or the Xbox Series. Instead, it'll lean on the convenience of the portable hybrid nature going from dock to, of course, handheld. So when I look at this, I do think in terms of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, that came in at a lower than expected price point of $40. Square Enix may be also thinking this way, and I'll give them this. The pricing as it continues to go down, the game key cards, while they're still frustrating for preservation, I think will look more and more enticing to people, especially as they can kind of enter that impulse buy territory around, say, the holiday season. It is important to note here, however, that we don't have official prices that Capcom have put out on any of the store pages at this time, and we're even still waiting. I think it's still rating pending on their website for Requiem, which, I mean, it's going to be mature rated, sure, but there's still a lot of official details that we're waiting to hear about from Capcom, and I would expect them to share all those details this week during Tokyo Game Show, maybe a big collector's edition and a whole bunch of other stuff. So keep this one in mind and keep an eye out for these listings on the store pages and even on other like retail sites like Best Buy or Walmart or Target to see if we really are going to have a cheaper version of Resident Evil Requiem on the Switch 2, and maybe this would start a bit of a trend for some of these game key cards to at least try to sell them a little better. Next up, let's talk about Ghost of Yotei, which is quickly approaching here, about 2 weeks or so away. And we had an interview with Steven Totillo over on GameFile, and this was with some of the people at Sucker Punch. But for example, this is a quote that was going around quite a bit. You can see. He says, this is from Brian Fleming, by the way, at Sucker Punch, saying, when we look at the financials and the costs, the man years, the amount of months that the team, that's times the size of the team worked on it, it's very, very similar, actually. This was in relation to the budget for the first game, Ghost of Tsushima, which we know was roughly $60 million, and that would be more development budget. There's still marketing and stuff, to my understanding, around that you would have to add in. But at least here, a budget for Ghost of Yotei, similar to Ghost of Tsushima, and it could be a little more. If it's 70 million, you might go, you know what, it's around that, you know? So really anything less than 100 million nowadays for a big AAA game seems to be impressive to a lot of people. It's not too much longer, we're going to be impressed by less than $200 million. But for Ghost of Yotei, coming off of Ghost of Tsushima, 60 to 70 million, that seems fairly reasonable for a game that most likely will sell several million copies. And here's the thing, with a budget like this, that again is more reasonable, you don't have to sell 10 million copies to be profitable. This is a game that could be profitable then off of 2 to 3 million copies and like legitimately profitable, not just squeaking by. And that's the thing with Sucker Punch. They're not a studio that's massive, that has multiple projects at any given time, but as they work on one title here and they're a bit smaller, they can be a bit more budget conscious, we can say, trying to solve problems a bit more rather than just like more creatively creatively, we'll say, than just throw a ton more money at it and fix it through way of just outsourcing all over the place, hiring on a bunch of new people, and that seems to be their strategy here for Ghost of Yotei. They also do have the benefit of they have developed Ghost of Tsushima. This is not like a sequel to it. I mean, different in terms of the characters and stuff, but a sequel enough to where they can use assets and some of the different animations and gameplay and other things that they learned from Ghost of Tsushima. So that also would play into the lower than expected budget. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Perfect Dark, which was recently canceled a couple of months ago now. And Perfect Dark is a game that I was very curious to see the direction that the initiative and Crystal Dynamics would go with it. Unfortunately, we saw some gameplay, and that was kind of it. We never really had a lot of the mechanics that we're even seeing there explained to us, and it's been sort of left as a mystery. Well, MP First not only got a hold of some concept art, but they also got some information around a few of the features and mechanics for the game. This we can see over on MP First. And this information comes from several screenshots of internal documentation shared by a former developer. This content dates back to a period close to the game's cancellation earlier this year and delves into the core concepts, also revealing several planned gameplay systems alongside screenshots featuring concept art. Now, I have this link down below in the sources if you want to go through and see some of the full screenshots of the concept art, which I will say, the concept art and the environments, they do look pretty impressive. They have to then obviously translate it over to in-game assets and other things, but it's extremely detailed, it's varied, it looks extremely sci-fi. And that's what they said they were going for originally. And they did mention they wanted to capitalize on what they noticed as a notable gap in the secret agent genre, mentioning things like Metal Gear Solid or 007. Both of those now are making a bit of a comeback. But the adrenaline system was one of the highlights, and adrenaline being a resource that regenerates over time, it grants the player different abilities and powers. So think of slowing down time. I started immediately picturing maybe bullet time even, but you have better aim, speed boosts, other things, and it seemed like doing consecutive, almost stylish kills as you go through for some of the enemies would work to boost this or extend some of the effects that you have. So it still sounded like it was going to be a very action-oriented game, but some of that gameplay we saw definitely leaned into the spy espionage side. And it's a real shame that we'll never really be able to see what they were going to come up with here, because they were still working on like vertical slices. That's just where they were. Sounds like it wasn't going to be coming out anytime soon. And most likely, yes, that's why Microsoft opted to cancel the game rather than let it sit in development for most likely was going to be another 3 to 4 years. And that sounds crazy considering they originally revealed that thing years and years ago now. It legitimately might have turned into like a 8 or 9 year project. So unfortunate there that we'll never really get to see what Perfect Dark would have materialized into. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, do you think a next generation system from either Sony or Microsoft will hit the $1,000 price point? Oh wow, 59% of people say yes. 41% say no. Here's the thing with this though, okay? So the $1,000 price point can be hit by a pro model. Doesn't have to be the baseline system, all right? So that's the thing to remember, and especially through the next generation of systems, if Microsoft really does open it up to where other third-party hardware manufacturers can come in and ship with this OS that they're developing to have across all these different platforms and systems, yeah, you could have an Asus or whoever show up and say, we're going to make the $1,000 system or $1,200 system that has all the bells and whistles. And if people, enthusiasts want to buy into it, they can. And that would then indeed shatter the $1,000 console mark. Doesn't necessarily mean there won't be a $400 system, a $500 system, but the $1,000 system, I'm telling you guys right now, is on the table, at least in a bit of a roundabout way. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from DP3. It says, we may have just witnessed Spawn Wave history. I think this is the first time in your poll results where one of the choices got 0%. We'd have to look at minimum vote counts, but it might have been. Here's the thing though, I double checked today, like yesterday. It was at 1%. So somebody out there is buying Mario Galaxy. Just a handful of people are buying Mario Galaxy by itself on the Switch from that collection. I think Concord was very close to it. Are you picking up Concord? It was legitimately like 98% no and 2% yes. It was very close. That's another one I have to go back and look at. But at least at the time that I went over that poll, you're absolutely right. That might have been the first time where something there, one of the choices, got 0%. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed last week's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you want to see the Switch 2 teardown that I did over the weekend and find out all the things Nintendo didn't necessarily tell you about the system. I can leave that right below it. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.